5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Hello, good morning to you, live from Washington DC. This is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
What's amazing, guys, is I have walked this entire rally in the middle of Iran without a hijab on.
Questions over Iran visits. Tonight, a TV exclusive on the British influencers appearing on Iranian state-linked media, acting as, in my opinion, complete propaganda machines for the Islamic Republic.
Mr. Speaker, we are getting closer relationships with the EU on a number of fronts.
Surprise breaking tonight, Sir Keir Starmer is set to call on Europe to ditch its over-dependence on America, whilst also pushing Britain closer to Europe.
Had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Summoned, Peter Mandelson has been called to Congress here in Washington DC to answer questions about his relationship with the one Jeffrey Epstein, but will he bother to come at all? I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Hi, good morning. Thank you for your company. I'm back after a few days off, and I'm here for the next, I think it's 9 or 10 nights, so you lucky so-and-sos. Welcome along to the Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington, DC is my panel, political strategist Matthew Hurt and the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and in London, broadcaster and journalist Christo Foufas. Hello, Christo. Give us a wave. There we are. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Right, moving on to our main news. A very regal wave there. Moving on to our main news this evening on the Late Show Live. I think there's something seriously wrong with the mechanics of the British state, and I'm not sure tonight whether there's any way back from it. Bear with me in this first segment because it will be lengthy, but I think it's very important indeed. Last week, 5 Palestine Action protesters walked free from court after being found not guilty of breaking into an Israeli defence firm in Bristol and assaulting a police officer. Well, that was that, but today, elsewhere, the government lost a High Court ruling that said it acted unlawfully when prescribing Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation, a move literally voted on in Parliament by our own elected politicians.
Judges ruling this morning that indeed it is an infringement on Palestine Action supporters' free speech to prescribe them as a terror organisation, putting them on a level playing field with, for example, supporters of ISIS.
And let's just remind ourselves as well, remember, the government prescribed Palestine Action after the group was accused of breaking into RAF Bryce Norton and causing millions of pounds worth of damage to military aircraft. The case is due to be heard at trial in January 2027, and they deny the charges. But now, and I think I'm the first to tell you this on television tonight, separately over the past few days, it appears we've seen the Islamist regime in Iran welcome a host of social media influencers and even the BBC for what is, in my opinion, a propaganda holiday to tell us how amazing life is there after the protest, and everybody apparently loves the Ayatollah. The same Iranian government that funds the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the same Iranian Islamic nutjobs who send terrorist sleeper cells to Western capitals, including London, and the same Iranian regime that just slaughtered 30,000 civilians under the cover of an internet blackout. Despite that, this is British former apprentice contestant and Palestine fanatic Bushra Sheikh in Tehran yesterday.
What's amazing, guys, is I have walked this entire rally in the middle of Iran without a hijab on. And I know what loads of you are thinking. You're thinking, how is she in the middle of Tehran at that square without her scarf on? Nothing has happened to me. Nobody has abused me. Nobody has said anything. In fact, when you are a visitor in Iran, they treat you so well, even me, without a hijab. But it's the fact that I have come here, I have been welcomed, and nobody has said a single thing to me about my hair being uncovered.
Yeah, very good. So what's going on there? What is Bushra doing there? Because it was only 3 years ago that Masha Amini, she's a 22-year-old Iranian woman, was reportedly beaten to death by the government's morality police for refusing to wear a hijab. So while Bushra talks about being able to walk freely without a hijab, why did she then don one later on for an appearance on the state-sponsored Press TV?
A lot of the media that we receive in the West is predominantly propagandized. It's not a reality on the ground of what's happening in Iran. I say bring me another country in the world that has suffered the sanctions that Iran has for more than 40 years and still being able to be patriotic, supporting their government. I mean, that itself speaks volumes, really.
So, Bushra, are you free to ditch the hijab or not? And for the record, Press TV, the outfit she was appearing on there in Iran, it was sanctioned in the UK because of concerns that its UK entity wasn't in control of its TV output, and rather it was being controlled from Tehran. Bushra is also a fine one to talk about being propagandised as well. She's literally been invited there, I assume, by the Iranian regime to pump out regime talking points. This is her banging on about a strong independent Iran refusing to kneel to imperialist powers and how UK sanctions on Iran are wrong.
We are at the point where the USA and Iran are having negotiations about Iran's ballistic missile program. This has always been about power and military might that nations have in a geopolitical sense and a geographical sense. It's about hegemony in the region. The USA doesn't want Iran to have a powerful program, something that they build in Iran on their own land for themselves. This isn't a question about which domain has more power. It's about accountability, it's about equality, and it's taking away hypocrisy and double standards. But the question is, what is Iran going to do? Are they going to stand their ground and they're going to say this is our program, or is the US going to say if you don't do as we say, then you're going to face consequences? But one thing I can tell you, with many people that I've spoken to, Iran has spoken and Iran is ready.
So, again, I'm asking, who sent Bushra there? Is she being paid, either in cash or accommodation? Because this tweet from journalist Emily Schrader has sparked some interest in the last hours or so. It reads, under the UK's Iran Sanctions Regulations 2023, UK nationals are bound by sanctions law wherever they are in the world. They are prohibited from dealing with the funds or economic resources of a designated person or from receiving economic resources from a designated entity. Now, it's worth stating that GBNews cannot independently verify whether Bushra has been paid or received those types of benefits during her stay, which would include, as I said, hotels or accommodation. But it does raise serious questions. The sad reality, though, is that it wasn't just Bushra invited on what appears to be a propaganda tour of Iran. This is the co-founder of Palestine Action US, who filmed herself in Iran on that very same trip, celebrating the recent court victory news of Palestine Action UK.
I feel incredibly inspired and optimistic by the millions of Iranians who are out in the streets today defending their government, despite the lies we hear in the West that the people are against the Islamic Republic. We see it actually has mass popular support. People support the resistance against U.S. imperialism.
And surprise, surprise, the BBC were also there as well.
Public holiday today, and here in Tehran it feels like a family festival.
Well, as a Belgian MP commented earlier today, they wrote, disgusting on X. They shut down the internet and slaughtered us, and now they invite the Ayatollah's BBC to label 47 years of occupation a family festival. I do wonder tonight what BBC Persian journalists think of that report from Tehran, because reporters at BBC Persia were told only last week how they've been warned their movements are being closely monitored by the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, designated as terrorists here in the United States. As they said, their families in Iran were being interrogated and persecuted for their reporting. I do wonder. But back home in Britain, Sky News were down in Brighton filming a bunch of Palestine cranks going door to door, asking locals to boycott Israeli products.
They split into small groups and head off to nearby streets.
We try to get people to get as many people as possible to sign up.
Oh, so I can't eat hummus?
Well, you can eat hummus, but just not Israeli hummus.
The group says its aim is to put economic pressure on Israel.
This is a local campaign in Brighton to boycott, divest and sanction against Israel because of the treatment of Palestinians.
Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it, going door to door or talking about Jews and asking people to boycott Israeli products? Well, Brighton woman Heidi Bachmann, whose husband's relatives were kidnapped and murdered by Hamas, she posted on X in response to that clip, in my tolerant city of Brighton, anti-Zionists are going door to door to push people to boycott Israeli products. She added that to her, it felt like they were marking down who wasn't interested and making lists of bad Jews. This is really scary. Well, look, tonight it's time to face the reality that the enemy is at our door, they walk our streets, they're in our country, whether directly or indirectly as useful idiots like Bushra Sheikh. Some of them, like Bushra, are British citizens who hate their country and hate the West. I'm not sure if this self-loathing and treachery is reversible. Can it be salvaged? I don't know, but it's time we confronted the problem face on. With me now is the journalist Imran Ramzan. Imran, nice to see you. Can I just get your take, please, on what the hell is going on here in Iran? Why are so many influencers now popping up in Iran saying life is great, the protests are over, we don't need to wear hijabs, and also the BBC there as well, coincidentally?
Yeah. Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me on the show. And it's Iram, by the way, not Imran.
Sorry, Iram. Apologies.
Yes. Well, I think the BBC is one thing, and, you know, I actually do largely admire Lise Doucette's reporting. She's a proper reporter and a professional, unlike one Bushra Sheikh who found fame on reality TV show The Apprentice a couple of years ago, and since then has been on somewhat of a journey, as they might say. Started off as a wannabe businesswoman, and now she seems to be just mouthing off a lot on social media. You know, she's made incendiary remarks over the years, most notably after October 7th. She said that Palestinians have achieved more in 5 minutes than Zelensky has with 75 billion. So it just goes to show you where she stands on the spectrum, really, what her views are.
Who invited her to Iran, do you think?
Well, it's clear from the way she's been filming, the way she's been behaving, the fact that she can openly film herself without the mandatory hijab. She must be invited there by the regime. I can't think of any other explanation. Because if you look at the video and the women behind her, they're all covered up. They're all fully covered up. I don't see any of them walking around without a hijab. And as you pointed out earlier, she did go on the state broadcaster wearing a hijab as well. So, you know, I think she's being very disingenuous trying to claim she's free when she's actually not.
Yeah, indeed. I'd like to know who sent her, who, if anybody, is paying for her, and if she has even just received accommodation from the Islamist regime in Iran, because potentially, I'm not accusing her directly here of any crimes, but potentially there would be questions raised about breaking sanctions laws. We have asked Bushra to come on the show tonight and have a chat with me and give comment, but we haven't heard back. But hopefully we can do that in the next day or two if she responds. Iram, thank you very much. I really appreciate your company, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon. With me now is the journalist Emily Schrader, who I quoted just then at the top of the show. Emily, nice to see you. Your take on this, please. This seems to be a deliberate attempt by the Islamist regime to win some good PR in the West.
Oh, absolutely. And I think all of the evidence you provided about Bushra to begin with speaks to really who she is. This isn't someone that's new to the shilling for the Islamic regime or even extremist Islamist terrorist organizations like Hamas. It's something that she has a long history of doing. But I mean, the core of the problem here is that this isn't something new. We know from documents that I was looking at just earlier today that the Islamic Republic has reported in their own state media that they've set aside at least $20 million for influencer marketing campaigns geared at foreigners. That's how they themselves branded it. This was also repeated in social media, and this was referring to at least one trip that occurred in November 2024. So all the indications imply that the regime was the funder behind this. In one of those articles that I mentioned, the Tehran municipality actually claimed credit for the travel fees and the hotel fees for participants in this influencer delegation. Now, is this influencer delegation the same thing? We don't know yet. We don't have all those answers, but it definitely warrants an investigation, not just for the UK, but also for Kala Walsh in the United States, the Palestine Action US founder. This is someone who has been to Iran on an influencer trip before. On that trip, she was filmed chanting death to America and death to Israel from a stage after she visited an IRGC military center. Now, how can you be allowed to do such a thing, given that there are tons of sanctions from the United States, and you have a government paying for you to produce content, even if you're not paid in terms of getting a check? You have a government that's paying for you in kind to produce content. I mean, this is a huge, huge problem. And both the OFAC office in the United States and the OFSI need to investigate this in the UK when it comes to Bushra Sheikh, because this is totally unacceptable and it's dangerous, frankly. This is a very dangerous regime that has made their intent to destroy England as well as the United States and, of course, Israel very clear for 48 years and counting.
Yeah, Emily, we've got Iranian sleeper cells in the UK. The head of MI5, which is our domestic intelligence service, they came out a few months ago and said they foiled 20 Iranian-linked terror attacks in the UK. I know of more. I know details of more because I've got friends who work in counter-terror. They are literally everywhere. As you said, we can't verify if these people we've mentioned tonight are being paid by the state, but what a coincidence. They all turn up at the same time and say how great life is and that Iranians are happy with the Islamist regime. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon. Let's get the thoughts of one more guest, Iranian dissident journalist Niag Ghorbrani. Niag, your take, please, on this tonight. Should the West, should Britain and even the United States be concerned about what's going on here with seemingly influencers being paid, maybe not necessarily Bushra, but as Emily just highlighted there, previously in the past, influencers being paid to go to Iran and pump out propaganda?
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me. Actually, you see clearly she is in base of IRGC. Actually, missile is behind her. How she's allowed to be there? This is serious question. How when she's not invited by government, how she went there and openly supporting Islamic Republic and in favor, actually, she talking in favor of the Islamic Republic. Is she actually going to the familian Iranian family who lost their lives during this actually last month? Actually, less than 40 days, we have more than 80,000 people get killed. We have women in Iran when they doesn't cover their hair, they get shot dead. How she going, without hijab? And you have to compare when she was in street without hijab, and when we went to she went to the military actually base, she covering, she had a hijab. When it's
because I think the base, as you mentioned, it was an IRGC missile unit. That's why she had to cover up there at least. So yeah, look, I don't want to focus just on Bushra, but for me, she is a prime example of the useful idiots we have in the UK. She's a British citizen. She's British born. She's a Pakistani Brit, but she hates Britain. And my point tonight is people like her hate our country. They hate the West. She was tweeting about October the 7th, pretty much in praise of it after October the 7th. She tweeted 2 years ago, how should I integrate in the UK when Britain has no culture? What culture am I integrating into? She literally hates our country, although she is a British product. So that's my wider point tonight.
Exactly.
Just last question to you.
She's happy, she's happy, let her stay in Islamic Republic. Let her stay there. When she's happy, send her, one way. Actually, give her one-way ticket. Send her to Tehran. Live with the Ayatollahs. Why she want to come back?
Yeah, well, I'll ask her next time I speak to her on the show, which will hopefully be soon. We've invited her on. If she comes on tomorrow night, which I hope she will, I'll ask her that very question. Niak, thank you very much. Great to see you. Niak Gobani, Iranian dissident and journalist. In a statement to GBNews, a BBC spokesperson has said the situation in Iran is of clear and urgent public interest. BBC News reports from some of the most challenging areas of the world for journalists in the interest of its audiences. Since 2009, BBC News has not been allowed to have any correspondent based in Tehran. BBC News has managed on some occasions to send correspondents to Iran, and when this is the case, we are clear in our reporting that the Iranian authorities prohibit any material produced by BBC News or any other international news organisation allowed official access to Iran to be shared with or run on BBC News Persian. The report from last night has included interviews with ordinary Iranians who, contrary to your suggestion, have been open about their views on the actions of the government. Separately, BBC News Persian reaches over 19 million people in Iran every week with independent and impartial views. And GBNews, as I said, also contacted Bushra Sheikh ahead of this programme tonight to offer her the opportunity to respond to our coverage. I am yet to receive a response from her, but in social media posts, she's denied being paid by the regime. Right, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. As I said to my guest then, my wider point is that we have useful idiots in our midst, whilst also dealing with the real deal, Islamists in our midst who come across on small boats beyond anything else. Still ahead on The Late Show Live tonight.
My own constituents, since I have been Home Secretary, have been telling me directly of abuses in the visa system that they can see with the evidence of their own eyes long before any officials in Whitehall.
As nursing leaders warn that up to 50,000 nurses could leave the NHS because of Shabana Mahmood's visa crackdown, should Britain relax immigration rules for NHS workers? We'll debate that in the next hour. But first tonight.
Mr. Speaker, we are getting closer relationships with the EU on a number of fronts.
Surprise, surprise. Sir Keir Starmer is set to call on Europe to ditch its over-dependence on America, whilst also pushing for stronger ties with Europe. Shouldn't we be doing the opposite? Shouldn't we be getting closer to the power, the might, the economic prowess of the United States? I guess not when it comes to the Prime Minister. Back in just a tick on The Late Show Live.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Peter Mandelson is a man of considerable expertise. He's the right man for this moment to be our ambassador.
That was our very high-grade Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy last year, backing Peter Mandelson's appointment as US Ambassador. Well, tonight, the former Labour peer has been summoned to Congress in Washington, D.C. to answer questions about Jeffrey Epstein. But will he actually show up? I don't think he will. They sent the letter today. Mandelson will probably get it tomorrow. He'll look at it and say, nah, I don't fancy that. Thank you very much. He's not obliged to come. Anyway, more on that very shortly. But next, breaking tonight, Sir Keir Starmer will urge Europe to take far greater responsibility for its own defence as he addresses world leaders at the Munich Security Conference this weekend. So the PM would argue that the continent must reduce its reliance on the United States while calling for closer UK-EU cooperation on security and defence. Our chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has the latest from Munich.
Prime Minister here at the Munich Security Conference, along with about 50 leaders. J.D. Vance, who really ruffled feathers here last year, saying that European leaders had let their countries down by letting in too many immigrants and suppressing free speech. He's not here, but Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, is. And the Prime Minister too. Now, of course, he gets a lot of criticism for that. He's clearly more comfortable on the world stage than he is at home, and my goodness, he's got trouble at home. But he's been meeting European leaders and Marco Rubio talking about Ukraine. They still want to put pressure on Russia to bring that war And after nearly 4 years, also the thorny issue of Greenland and the fact that we don't know ultimately whether America will have our back. Europe finally acknowledging that they've been far too dependent on America. They've known that they can rely on America being there. Donald Trump is insisting European countries have to spend 5% of GDP on defence, though in Britain's case, and I suspect many others, that is many, many years away and is going to be very painful indeed, I suspect. Now, the Prime Minister in the morning making a big speech here and expected to talk about how we need to move away from over-dependence on the United States to interdependence, and also talking about the need for Europe to step up and work together, European countries both within the European Union and Britain too, and share responsibility for their collective security and defence. A huge wake-up moment for Europe when Russia invaded Ukraine, another huge wake-up moment when Donald Trump came to the White House just over a year ago.
Right, joining me in Washington is my panel tonight, the political strategist Matthew Hurt and the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and also in London, journalist and broadcaster Christo Foufas. Good evening, chaps. Thank you for your company. Who should I start with? Niall, at the Munich Security Conference last year, it was the same conference, as Catherine said, that JD Vance got on the stage and said was it the same conference where he jokes that the UK would be the first Islamist country to get to have nuclear weapons? Was that I think it was that conference.
I think he's made that joke on a couple of occasions.
Has he? That's a good one.
But I think that last year's speech by JD Vance at the Munich Security Conference was an earth-shattering event, of course, for our dear European friends who have been living for decades in a lifestyle of complete complacency. And so it was a necessary wake-up call for Europe. I think that Marco Rubio's speech tomorrow will also deliver a lot of tough love for Europe.
Is that what you've heard, or are you...
Well, that's what I understand.
You've heard on the grapevine.
I think that it'll be a strong message about continuing US support commitment to the transatlantic alliance, but of course our European allies need to do far more in terms of their own defence. And I expect also the Secretary of State will address issues such as freedom of speech under immense threat in Europe, and also the issue of mass migration in Europe. That was a centrepiece as well of the recent national security strategy as well, the discussion about civilizational erasure in Europe, actually, as a result of Islamification taking place. And so I do think the speech tomorrow by Marco Rubio will be multifaceted, powerful, tough, a tough message. It's a message that European nations leaders need to hear.
Matthew, Keir Starmer, our dear Prime Minister, a very high-grade guy, he is making a speech tomorrow as well, and he's going to be calling, as we just said, on the UK needing to get closer to the EU and not relying on you guys, the United States, so much. I personally think that's a mistake, because you've got the hottest economy in the world, something like 5% GDP in last quarter, 4-point-something% before that. You've got no illegal immigration. Your gas prices are below $3 in most states. Are we making a mistake in Britain by cozying up to the EU and not you guys?
Voters made an overwhelmingly positive decision when they voted for Brexit. President Trump has made this a central theme of his foreign policy since the first administration. Europe should pay more for its defense. And I think, as you've hinted at, Ben, the casual socialism and big government style of many Western European nations in particular means it throttles the economy, and they aren't able to afford what they should be affording to pay for Europe's defense. There is nothing better than a strong relationship with the United States and Great Britain. There's nothing better than a strong relationship with the United States and Western European nations, even up to Ukraine, as we talk about that conversation. But it is so important for European nations to take on additional responsibility. It is very clear that Sir Keir Starmer is like all the other globalists. He'd love to be president of a united Europe, and I think that the voters and the people of Great Britain are totally opposed to that.
Oh yeah, the EU SSR, Niall. What would your old boss Maggie Thatcher do if she had a choice and a predicament of cozying up to the EU again, or maybe getting closer to America?
Well, I have no doubt that my former boss Margaret Thatcher would view Keir Starmer as a complete clown. That's the reality. And
what makes you say that?
He's simply not serious, actually, about Britain as a military power. And now he's talking about the UK moving closer towards the sinking European Union and moving away from the United States, a catastrophic mistake that Margaret Thatcher would have strongly condemned. And I do think that, Keir Starmer is, and he's the weakest Prime Minister, I think, in the modern era, but he's flailing around on the world stage here. He has no real commitment actually to enhancing Britain's national security, improving Britain's defences. Yeah. He's committed to a vast socialist welfare state. He's an absolute disaster for Britain, and I think the speech tomorrow will reflect that.
OK, gbnews.com/you'll say. Vicky, hello Vicky. Vicky Burt, you've said 17.4 million people said no to closer ties with the EU, almost twice the amount that voted for Labour. I don't think the EU are really our friends. I agree with you. But the leftists, Vicky, would say, well, that vote was, it's 10 years this year, isn't it? 10 years since the Brexit vote. That's insane. And arguably, they've not delivered what people voted for. We've got open borders. We've got actually worse borders than ever before. I'll tell you what we did. I came back to the US from the UK yesterday, day before. I got a taxi to Heathrow, and my driver was where was he from? He was a Bulgarian guy. And I was saying to him, before Brexit, we had all the hard-working Eastern Europeans, the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Bulgarians, Hungarians, and after Brexit, you guys were forced to go home. In fact, the Poles self-deported because their country's now as hot as ever before. And then what we did, we invited all the third worlders in, millions and millions of people from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and arguably lots of them are on benefits now compared to, say, the Eastern Europeans. So I guess it's, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Yeah, gbnews.com/you'll say. And somebody else said, if Starmer believes European nations need to be more responsible for their defence, does he also agree Ukraine needs to be more responsible for its own defence rather than expecting the US to do all the work? Right, let's take a quick look at some of the other main news stories here in America. 2 immigration and customs enforcement officers may have lied under oath about last month's shooting of a migrant in Minneapolis. That's according to the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Acting Director Todd Lyons says the unnamed officers have been placed on administrative leave while an internal investigation is carried out. Elsewhere, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has declared that transatlantic relations stand at a defining moment as he prepares to lead the US delegation at the Munich Security Conference tomorrow. It marks the first major international gathering since President Trump agreed on the framework for a new deal on Greenland.
The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be.
Former CNN presenter Don Lemon has pleaded not guilty to charges relating to his coverage of anti-immigration protests last month. Lemon was charged with conspiracy to deprive rights and interfering with religious freedoms by allegedly obstructing First Amendment rights by force. That's when he attended a church service with protesters of ICE. Elsewhere, the Trump administration is suing Harvard University for alleged failures to comply with a US Department of Justice civil rights investigation. The lawsuit accuses Harvard of not disclosing data needed to determine whether it had illegally considered race in its admissions processes. The university claims it's unlawful government overreach. OK, still ahead on The Late Show Live tonight.
Widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here.
Nursing leaders warn up to 50,000 staff could quit the NHS because of Shabana Mahmood's visa crackdown. So the big question tonight is, should Britain relax immigration rules, especially for NHS workers? We'll debate that in the next hour. Also tonight.
Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's always everyone else's fault, isn't it? It's Morgan McSweeney's fault. It's Mandelson's fault. Peter Mandelson has been summoned to Congress over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. But the big question is, will he bother to turn up at all? He's not obliged to. We're covering that next on The Late Show Live. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Maybe those clown police in Canada have stopped calling the murderer who gunned down kids a gun person because they're trans. Police, meanwhile, say the 18-year-old suspect in the Canadian high school shooting had previously built a mass shooting simulator on a children's internet game called Roblox. We'll cross live to Canada very shortly, where Globalist-in-Chief Mark Carney is expected to pay tribute to the victims. That's coming up in the next hour or so. But breaking earlier tonight, Peter Mandelson has been summoned to appear before Congress here in Washington, D.C. to testify about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So in a letter dished out today, the former US ambassador by two Democratic members of the House Oversight Committee told Mandelson it was clear he possessed extensive social and business ties to Epstein and that he holds critical information that they'd like to hear. Breaking also in the past few moments, they've gone even further, accusing him of lying about his ties to Epstein. This is the House Oversight Dems, the Democrats, saying, "We know that former British ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, lied about his close ties to Epstein and forwarded him confidential government information. We are requesting that he comes before Congress in the United States to share what he knows and help bring closure to survivors." My panel are back with me, Matthew Hurt and Niall Gardner. Niall, he's not obliged to come. He could just ignore this letter, can't he, because he can't be subpoenaed. Will he come to the US to give evidence, Mandelson?
Well, he should, but he probably won't. And as you point out, he can't be forced to come over and testify. But I do think that Mandelson has a lot of questions to answer about his links to Epstein and his key role as UK ambassador to Washington, a critically important role on the world stage. I do think that Mandelson should also face questions over his role selling the Chagos surrender deal to the United States.
You think he was installed as ambassador to see that through?
Yes, I think he was. And I think he should face full questions in Congress about exactly what he told the US administration with regard to the whole Chagos deal and what exactly were his orders from London, who was involved, etc. I do think this is a huge can of worms once you open it up with regard to Mandelson and not only the Epstein scandal, but also, of course, the Chagos scandal as well.
Well, I think Starmer's orders to Mandelson would have been something like, Dear Lord Mandelson, please attain for my my white guilt, my colonial guilt, and give away sovereign British territory. And by the way, I hate UK taxpayers so much. Let's charge them 30 billion quid for the process. Yeah. Matthew, the Democrats and Republicans this side of the pond both aligned that Mandelson should come and appear. He probably won't because he's not obliged to, but how important is it to the survivors and victims of Epstein and his associates that he appears?
Ben, I think this is something that we should continue to talk about, because a hearty kudos to the British government and to the people of Europe who are now holding elected leaders and appointed leaders accountable. It is something we are not seeing in the United States. Democrats are using this as a political ploy to attack Donald Trump. Republicans are obfuscating on Capitol Hill. There are very few Republicans and Democrats, congressmen like Thomas Massey, the Republican from Northern Kentucky, who are making this about the victims. And I think that is something that we should keep in mind and keep thinking about. This is about the victims, justice for those victims. And, you know, Attorney General Pam Bondi said earlier this week, if we release these names, if we prosecute people, it'll bring the system down. And I think people are ready to bring elements of the system down. This is outrageous.
Bring it down. Christo Fufats live in London, journalist and broadcaster. Hello, my friend. It's kind of bringing the establishment down in the UK. I said the other night, these files were released, I guess, to bring down the establishment here, but all that's ended up happening is that it's caused an explosion back in Blighty, Christo.
And it's, of course, completely guilt by association. Now, that doesn't mean to say that they're guilty of any of the heinous crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, but they're guilty of the most appallingly poor judgment. And of course, no idea. Keir knew nothing about it. He had no idea that Lord Mandelson was still friends with a paedophile. Just as, I mean, we've also got the former Prince Andrew on the front pages today as well. Let's not forget his line. No idea that anything was happening with Jeffrey Epstein, was too honourable. Remember, we heard that one as well. So it's all just so utterly murky. And it just reminds me of actually a quote I first heard from you, and it's so pertinent. I gave it on the last programme of Lord Glassman, and how he had tried to warn 10 Downing Street of how disastrous the Lord Mandelson ambassadorial appointment was after he'd been to the inauguration in the States, where they told him at the inauguration that they thought that the Labour government was a front organisation for paedophiles and Pakistani rape gangs, and that several people showed him a photograph of Peter Mandelson blowing out birthday candles with Jeffrey Epstein. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, that comment, that report from Glassman to Labour was just absolutely damning. I mean, they're not wrong, are they? Look at the stories that have come out from Labour this week. I saw one yesterday about some lowly Labour politician harbouring her child rapist son and all sorts of nonsense. Zara Sultana called them the party of pedos the other day. Christo, thank you very much. Let's get the word from Benedict Spence, political commentator. Benedict, will Mandelson be hopping on a plane across the Atlantic, Heathrow to DC?
I'd be very surprised if he did. I imagine that his lawyers would be jumping up and down, absolutely furious if he considered doing it for a second. He'd be very foolish to do so. I mean, right now, simply what we're talking about is the defenestration, effectively, of a series of people in the United Kingdom, Peter Mandelson and also, obviously, former Prince Andrew. And it's all about them, and it's all about what's going on here, and not a lot about what's going on in the United States. And the problem is, if you are Peter Mandelson, and right now you've not actually been charged with anything, but there is an investigation ongoing, and your appointment has caused a tremendous amount of embarrassment to the government, but it could cause even more, this is the key thing, you would be taking the advice to keep absolutely stum. You don't want to do, of course, what Prince Andrew himself did, which is put your foot in it because you open your mouth too hard. And what would happen if Peter Mandelson ended up going to the US to testify, which, let's be clear, I think morally is the right thing for him to do. I absolutely think that he should, but he won't, because he will be on the stand, he will be made to grandstand in front of the US media, and he will be asked all kinds of probing questions. They will make it a circus. They will try to get as much out of him as possible, and we still don't know, actually, quite how much more there is to come out of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, what the Prime Minister knew, and what further ramifications it could have for Keir Starmer and his administration. I think that's a key thing to bear in mind here.
Yeah, I thought Starmer would resign pretty promptly last week, and then I changed my mind because I remembered how arrogant a man he is, and I was right. He's not resigned. He's still in post. He's still blaming everybody else, and I reckon he'll hang on for the rest of his term. Benedict, thanks very much. Benedict Spence, political commentator. Appreciate your company. Lord Mandelson has previously denied, of course, any wrongdoing in relation to Jeffrey Epstein, stating, "I was never culpable or complicit in his crimes. Like everyone else, I learned the actual truth about him after his death." He added that he had relied on assurances of his innocence that turned out later to be horrendously false. Well, that's all right then. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
Widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here.
Lots of you getting in touch about this, and you're not happy. Nursing leaders have warned that up to 50,000 staff could quit the NHS because of Shabana Mahmood's visa crackdown. So should Britain relax immigration rules for NHS workers? We'll debate that in the next hour. But first tonight, I'll tell you why the Prime Minister is claiming Reform UK would divide the world. No, not just divide the UK, not just cause tensions in the UK or whatever they're accusing them of. Divide the world. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Ben Leo. Still ahead, 4 hours of litter picking a month or you lose your benefits. That's the demand being made of job seekers on universal credit. Do you think it's fair? I do. gbnews.com/yoursay. Why should they get free benefits without doing anything, sitting in their underpants watching loose women? I don't think it's right. But first, let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers, starting with The Times, which is, the headline reads, well, let's introduce my panel first. Matthew Hurt, Niall Gardner, and in London, Christo Foufas. The Times, it's here somewhere. Daily Star, FT, reform would divide the world. That's the headline, according to the Times. Keir Starmer will say in his big speech tomorrow at the Munich Security Conference that Reform UK would divide not just the UK but the world as well. Christo Fufas, what do you make of that? Is Reform really that divisive? Is Nigel Farage really such a figure that would divide planet Earth?
Do you know, I'm exhausted. I'm honestly, not just because of the time of night that it is here, I'm exhausted by this just absolute nonsense. I mean, clearly, firstly, this is a desperate Prime Minister who is in the dying embers of a disastrous 18 or so months, more than that now. But also, why can't he say, I disagree with Reform, this is my offer? Why can't he say, actually, the Reform, I don't like their stance on this, Labour would be better on this. But no, it's this hyperbolic nonsense that they would divide not just the country, now it's the world. Next week it'll be the solar system. The week after it'll be the universe, because we have to have this nonsense hysteria rather than actually let's discuss the issues.
Niall, what do you think people think is divisive about Reform? What are they saying? What's Nigel Farage saying, or their MPs, that is so divisive? I don't quite get it.
You know, I think this is just insane North Korean-style propaganda from the Starmer regime.
But what do you think it is? I know you don't agree, but what do you? I'm just trying to look at it from their point of view. What is so divisive? The immigration stuff?
What would be divisive in Keir Starmer's eyes is the idea that Nigel Farage actually wants secure borders. He wants to deport illegal migrants.
That sounds racist.
I think the Labour government sees this as somehow dividing the world. I suppose it does divide the world between those countries who want secure borders to defend their national sovereignty and those countries who want to export large numbers of illegal migrants to the UK. So this is the divide in the world, I guess. And once again, this is desperate stuff from Keir. So I don't know who's writing his speeches these days, but I mean, they've gone even further downhill, if at all that is possible, but I think we've actually seen that.
They are just manically obsessed, Labour and Starmer, with Reform. Instead of talking about their own talking points and what they're going to do in government, they're in power with a massive majority. All they seem to do is go, yeah, but Nigel Farage, yeah, but Reform. They are just obsessed, like manically obsessed. I was just talking to you, Matthew, about the divide here in America. I look at it as a Brit here and think, oh, illegal migration gone, net zero gone, regulations rolled back on sort of emissions and so on cars, making cars cheaper for people. A lot of good stuff going on here, but I speak to people in LA, for example, and they say this is the worst period in American history. I'm so sorry you're here when this is happening. Where does that change of perception come from? That massive sort of, I mean, it's just poles apart. Where does it come from?
Well, what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, consistent in polling, is that Democrats have gotten less and less patriotic, regardless of who the president in the White House is. But to your earlier point with Sir Keir Starmer, he's clearly seen the polling.
Yeah.
There are elections in May that will have widespread impact on Labour Party and Reform in particular, and the increasing calls for his resignation. And so he is throwing everything at the wall to whip voters into a frenzy. Here in the United States, I think we have a tremendous opportunity to make America great and bring our partners across the finish line. And I think that Democrats see Orange Man in the White House and Orange Man is bad.
Yeah, I was just telling you, I was in LA. Some really nice woman with her dog was showing us these beauty spots where you can see the LA skyline. It turned out she was a Trump-hating Democrat. I didn't want to bother to argue with her, but she apologised to me for being in America at this time, as she said. I just don't understand it. I mean, it looks good to me for the most part. Anyway, coming up next on The Late Show Live.
My own constituents, since I have been Home Secretary, have been telling me directly of abuses in the visa system that they can see with the evidence of their own eyes long before any officials in Whitehall.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Happy Valentine's Day, dry and sunny for many of us, but the dry weather won't last all that long. The next batch of rain and hill snow is on the way overnight tonight It is chilly out there, risk of ice first thing, as well as quite a widespread rural frost. That should melt away, though, by lunchtime to leave many of us with a fairly fine day, particularly across eastern areas. That's where the sunshine's going to be the longest lived. Further west, the sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on. That's ahead of this weather front. And highs of around 5 or 6 degrees for most of us. It's not going to feel too bad in the sunshine, though, particularly across more eastern areas. But the cloud will thicken as the night goes on, particularly across more western areas. Across the east, though, the far northeast of Scotland, an early frost under those clearer skies will develop. Further south across parts of northeastern England as well, it will be a chilly night. And across parts of Northern Ireland, that rain already falling as snow to higher levels through this evening. That rain will push into parts of Wales, southwestern England later on in the night. And for many of us, it will be a cloudy and relatively cold night. And as that rain continues its journey eastwards, falling into that colder air, it brings a risk of snow to low levels across northern areas, 1 to 3 centimetres accumulating, but the snow will turn to rain by the morning as milder air is moving in behind it. So although it is a cold start to the night, behind it we'll see temperatures rise above 0 by Sunday morning as clearer skies and some blustery showers spread in from the west, but still a risk of some snow, perhaps some travel disruption first thing on Sunday morning. But as I said, that risk is only very short-lived as it does turn somewhat milder, at least above 0 by Sunday lunchtime. And behind it, lots of showers moving in, some fairly unsettled weather, so a much wetter day to come on Sunday compared to Saturday. So do make the most of the sunshine today if you can. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh, no, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Mr. Speaker, we are getting closer relationships with the EU on a number of fronts.
Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer is set to call on Europe to ditch its over-dependence on America, whilst also pushing for stronger ties with the EU.
Had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Mandelson summoned. Peter Mandelson has been called to Congress here in the United States to answer questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But will he bother coming at all?
This is a devastating and unimaginable tragedy. We can't imagine what the community is going through, but I know it's causing us all to hug our kids a little bit tighter.
Disturbing detail emerges tonight. Police say the 18-year-old suspect in a Canadian high school shooting had previously built a mass shooting simulator on the children's game Roblox. And in just moments, we're expecting Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to make an address and pay tribute to the 9 people killed.
My own constituents, since I have been Home Secretary, have been telling me directly of abuses in the visa system that they can see with the evidence of their own eyes long before any officials in Whitehall.
As nursing leaders warn that up to 50,000 nurses could leave the NHS because of Shabana Mahmood's visa crackdown, we'll debate whether we should relax immigration rules, particularly for NHS workers. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Remember, no breaks this hour. Hello, welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel, the political strategist Matthew Hurt and the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and still in the wings in London, broadcaster and journalist Christo Foufas. Hello, Christo. We'll catch up with you very shortly. Thank you for joining us tonight. Right, moving on. Let's set our attentions to Canada, shall we? Because it's emerged that the teenager who opened fire at a remote Canadian school had created a video game to allow players to simulate a mass shooting. Jesse Van Rootselaar, the 18-year-old who shot dead his mother, stepbrother, 5 young students and a teacher during his rampage, he built the virtual killing experience on children's game Roblox, one of the world's most popular gaming platforms for kids. It's used by an estimated 61% of British children aged between 8 and 14. Well, tonight, Roblox has now confirmed that it has removed the user account owned by the shooter and has said that they're committed to fully supporting law enforcement in their investigation, adding that they use a combination of AI and a team of safety specialists to review content. Well, joining me in Washington is my panel, Matthew Hurt and Niall Gardner. Niall, we should be hearing from Mark Carney, the, as I call the globalist-in-chief, fairly shortly, be making a statement on the victims and so on. My only issue with this story is not so much about Roblox. I mean, it's an interesting bit of colour, I guess, simulating a mass shooting incident online, but it's still the way the Canadian authorities have responded to this tragedy. First of all, the cops calling the guy, the trans person, a gun person, to respect their pronouns. And then Mark Carney suggesting a couple of days ago that they would be flying flags from government buildings at half-mast, including the trans flag.
Unbelievable. This, the shooter, this mass murderer, of course, was a trans person, a boy claiming to be a girl. I think this is the latest in a series of shootings by transgender mass murderers. This should be the focus, actually. This is a real national security issue now, crimes carried out by transgender individuals, actually. And the woke response of the Canadian government is absolutely shocking. It's an absolute disgrace how they are responding to this. And this is an issue of fundamental national security for Canada, also for the United States as well. And we've had a wave of shootings by transgender individuals driven by intense hatred, actually, and something has to be done about this. This should be the focus of the Canadian government, but of course they're doing absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah, indeed. Matthew, is there, and I hate this argument, but I'm going to ask the question, is there an argument that we should be more mindful of video games? We hear it in the UK after incidents and violence that, oh my gosh, she played Call of Duty or something like that. We should ban these games. Is there anything in this story tonight that the shooter simulated the attack on Roblox.
The major question that I would ask in a situation like this is whose responsibility is it as Roblox or the video game industry to police themselves? Because if they don't, the government will look for a way to step in, and I think that is the wrong answer every time. I played plenty of video games as a young man. I loved 007 on Nintendo 64.
Oh, GoldenEye.
And GoldenEye.
What a game.
Excellent movie, excellent video game. But I never had the desire to go out and harm the neighbors or anybody in my school. The second question behind this is what is happening as governments and the woke left lean in on the trans delusion. As Niall said, we've got an increase in shooters, one just outside Nashville, where I grew up several months ago. And this is very concerning. And as woke leftists, who are moms and dads sometimes, play into the delusion, what are they allowing and what is happening? We know statistically 42% of people who identify as trans end up committing suicide. So there is a propensity for violence, violence against themselves and against other people now.
Well, they say, Niall, that that stat you just reeled off there about the number of people, trans people, committing suicide, they say, yeah, trans people are overrepresented in committing suicide because they are treated so badly by society. They may listen to your comments tonight, Niall, and think, oh no, I'm being targeted and victimised here, and that's partly why they commit suicide. I always argue, and I think I'm probably right, that they tragically take their own lives because they're mentally ill. There's something wrong with them chemically in their brain, which is, again, my argument is that is why they go down this trans route.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, actually, and this should be, treated as a mental illness epidemic, frankly, a real mental illness problem across the United States, across Canada, across the free world. And I think that there is a growing threat to public security posed by crazy transgender individuals full of hate.
Well, people would say, if they were here to argue the point, they'd say, well, non-trans people commit more mass shootings than trans people.
Well, if you look at the small number of transgender people out there, they're committing an awful lot of crimes, a lot of mass shootings actually, and as a small little group, they're carrying out a horrendous amount of killing actually, and this is a fundamental threat to the security of the United States and in this case Canada. And the last thing we need is woke policing or woke response from the useless Carney government in Canada. Actually, we need to see firm action actually to defend the safety of school children who are being threatened by crazed transgender individuals actually who are killing large numbers of people.
Okay, these are live pictures now from Canada in Tumblr Ridge, where there's a vigil being held. There's flowers there outside the school, the front of the school where the shooting took place. We're awaiting Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, of course, the former Governor of the Bank of England. I also call him the globalist in chief as well. Christo Fufas is down the line. Christo, what do you make of this story tonight that the shooter in this instance simulated the attack on Roblox?
I think it's worrying. I mean, I agree actually fundamentally with you that I don't really like this connection that's always made that, we used to have it with movies in the late 80s and 90s that, violent movies would create people going out and committing all these horrific acts of violence. And I tend to feel the same way about video games. However, there does need to be something done about the idea that a game for children, some sort of third-party app, can create a situation where they can then simulate a mall shooting. I mean, that doesn't seem like something that children should have access to. And that is something I heard your contributor there saying, actually, look, this is something that they need to get their house in order, otherwise governments will step in. And on that, I think it's a fair comment. Children shouldn't have access to games where you can simulate shootings, but older people, adults, all of that sort of stuff, all of those, Call of Duty, all of that, I think they're fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's the responsibility of game developers to make sure. I mean, talking about GoldenEye, the N64, great game, maybe one of the best games ever. You've got Trevorland, Oddjob, you've got the Golden Gun, Natalia, I think that was her name, Natalia. you can go on there and do anything you want. If you are of that state of mind as a human being, where you're thinking you're playing a game which is intended for something else, maybe more innocent purposes, but your state of mind is such that you want to mimic mass shootings, that's not the game's fault. That's the well, that's a direct link to A, your mental health, and B, maybe your upbringing or whatever troubles you're going through. I just think it's a dangerous road to sort of blame game developers.
No, but if a game is meant for children, though, I would just say, though, that I do think that based on any game that's got like gunfire and stuff, there should be an age restriction. And I think a lot of them have an age restriction, and that would seem reasonable. That you need to be a certain age if you're going to be shooting loads of people in a video game, and it's quite graphic. Just like you would have for a movie that would have lots of violence in.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And there's that the famous joke as well. Say, I don't know if you remember this, Chris. Though it was, who says that video games influence the minds of young people? You don't see youngsters dancing around darkened rooms, munching pills to inane music, do you, all the time? As in Pac-Man. But yeah, there we go. Right, with me now is Canadian journalist and writer for the Free Press, Rupert Subramanya. Rupert, nice to see you. What are we expecting here from Mark Carney this afternoon in Tumblr Ridge?
Well, there was a show of unity today in Tumblr Ridge when the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and leaders of all of the major political parties, including the separatists who'd like to be an independent Quebec, showed up at Tumblr Ridge for a vigil. And it was a show of unity, and it was a coming together of politicians from different political stripes in a time where the country is mourning in the aftermath of this horrific massacre.
What do Canadians, Rupert, what do they think of Mark Carney and the government and the police? I mean, the police chief, for example, saying they're going to refer to the shooter as a gun person to respect their pronouns. What do everyday Canadians think of that kind of approach?
I think a lot of Canadians right now are reflecting on this tragedy. It shattered a deeply held Canadian belief about who we are and who we are not. This was a national psychological shock. Canada, let me remind you, has built part of its identity on being different from the United States, especially when it comes to things like gun violence. That sense of moral distance was punctured overnight. Having said that, school shootings remain extremely rare in Canada. This is not a recurring national pattern. Canada still doesn't have anything like America's pattern of school shootings, and that's precisely why this hit the country so hard. And when it comes to trans people, trans-identifying people who go around killing people, as we've seen in the U.S., this has been the country's first such incident, and we don't quite even know if this individual had been receiving gender-affirming care, if he was on hormones. What we do know is that he was a very mentally ill person. He suffered from all kinds of mental health issues, and he was on all kinds of drugs, including, and he was also on marijuana and other psychedelic drugs. He tried to burn his mother's house down a couple years ago. There were firearms in the house, and so it's a very complex picture here, and we still don't know what actually drove this individual to commit this horrific massacre.
Specifically in reaction to the police chief referring to the killer's pronouns, calling him a gun person, is anybody in Canada bothered by that? Because in the United States and the UK, we saw that clip and we thought, well, unbelievable really, that at a time of gross tragedy where children have been killed by a killer, intent on just killing as many people as you can. We're just going to go live, actually, Rupert. Hold on down the line. We're going to go live to Tumblr Ridge in Canada. We'll come back to you in just a sec. So, of course, as you've probably observed, it's a minute's silence here for the victims of this shooting. Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, is due to take to the podium in just a second. This is live pictures from Tumblr Ridge in Canada, the site of where the transgender shooter went on a school shooting, killed his mother, a sibling, young children as well. Friends and family members there holding pictures of the victims, of the loved ones who were tragically taken by the shooter.
Tonight, we gather as a community in grief. We gather to honor the lives that were taken, to stand with the families who are carrying unimaginable pain, and to remind one another that none of us walks through this alone. Tonight, on Treaty 8 territory, and we acknowledge the Indigenous people who have cared for this land since time immemorial. We thank them for their stewardship and for standing with us in a moment of heartbreak. This evening is about remembrance. It's about reflection. It's about love. We offer our prayers for those who are recovering, for those who are injured, and for those who continue to carry physical and emotional wounds from this tragedy. I ask that we all approach this vigil with the respect and dignity this moment deserves. To our media friends who are here, thank you for helping share our story. We ask that you please be mindful and respectful of the families and those that are grieving. In the days since this tragedy, we have seen heartbreak, but we have also seen extraordinary compassion and courage. Neighbors checking in on neighbors, strangers offering help, leaders from across our province and country standing with us. That is what tonight is about. We are a small community, but we are a strong community. We are a family, and in moments like this, families come together. Before we continue, I would like to acknowledge two young members of our community and the people that helped them, Jeff and Andrew Slovic, the brothers who organized the first vigil. In the immediate aftermath of this tragedy, your leadership, your compassion, and initiative helped bring people together when we needed it most. Thank you. This evening we'll begin with a prayer from West Moberly Elder George Deserlet, from West Moberly First Nations, and Indigenous Leadership Chief Wilson and Chief Paquette, grounding us in reflection and respect. We are honored by the presence of the Governor General, the Prime Minister, the Lieutenant Governor, the Premier, and the federal party leaders who have traveled here tonight to stand in solidarity with Tumblr Ridge. We thank them for being with us. We also thank our local members of Parliament and members of the Legislative Assembly for being here with us and for their support during this difficult time. We are also joined by leaders from across our region, province, and country, and we thank them, along with our first responders and frontline workers, for standing with us tonight as we honor the victims and hold close their families and loved ones. There will also be words of faith and reflection, and we will close this vigil together in unity. Let us hold space for one another tonight. Let us remember. Let us support one another. And let us show through our compassion and our presence what this community truly stands for. Again, thank you for being here, Tumblr Ridge Strong. Now I would like to introduce Chief Wilson, Chief Paquette from West Moberly and Soto First Nations, our neighbors and part of the Tumblr Ridge family, to come and stand with me at the podium. And I also at this time, I would like to invite Elder George Deserlet to come up to the mic to give us a First Nation prayer.
It is with great difficulty.
You were telling me there that there was a blessing from the chap there, the mayor of Tumblr Ridge, a chap called Daryl Krakoa, where they blessed the indigenous land. Is that right?
What we're seeing here right now is a recognition of the First Nation. We see this in Australia. We see this in Canada. We're basically the colonizers, and this is, again, I want to be very sensitive to this. In this setting, I think it's heartbreaking to witness a school shooting and for a community to experience this. But even in a memorial or a vigil, what we have is recognition that inhabitants that are not European or not of European descent first occupied the land and were then displaced by European settlers. And we see this in Canada, and we see it in Australia as well, and it appears as though that is what is taking place right now.
Mark Carney should be taking to the podium very shortly. No, I'm not sure on your knowledge about Indigenous people of Canada, but I was of the assumption that Canada has a very bad reputation when it comes to its treatment of the Indigenous people.
That's a good question.
Ideas?
We'll see if Mark Carney has some comment on that. But I think overall, with regard to Carney's leadership of Canada, he's dragging the country down.
It's kind of Donald Trump's fault that Carney's in power, isn't it? Because the Conservatives in Canada were, I think, cruising, correct me if I'm wrong, to victory until President Trump started talking about annexing Canada.
Well, there's a very closely fought contest in Canada. I think it's very unfortunate that the Canadians now have a Prime Minister who is increasingly looking towards communist China to do business, and I think that's an incredibly dangerous path for Canada to be taking, actually, moving away from the United States towards the communist Chinese regime, a genocidal regime, I might add, in Beijing. And I haven't heard Mark Carney commenting about the genocide of the Uyghurs in communist China.
Yeah.
And over 1 million Uyghurs languishing in concentration camps. Carney hasn't spoken about that, actually.
If you're just tuning in to the Late Show Live on GB News, these are live pictures from Tumblr Ridge in Canada, which is the site of the mass school shooting committed by that trans person, the male, the 18-year-old teenager, the boy. We're just waiting for Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, to take to the podium. There's a ceremony just happening right now relating to the Indigenous people of Canada. Rupa Subramanya is still on down the line, Canadian writer and journalist. Rupert, I just wanted to ask to get your reaction to the police chief from a few days ago who referred to the gunman as a gun person because they were trans. How did Americans react to that? Were they bothered by that language, that they were still concerned about the deceased shooter's pronouns?
Well, this is Canada, right? It's progressive and it's not going to change anytime soon. Fortunately, unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned. We just watched the vigil. We saw the mayor speaking a few minutes ago. And what did you see? You saw him opening this event with the land acknowledgement. This is now baked into the DNA of this country, where land acknowledgements start before police press conferences. They start at vigils such as this. They begin. They're everywhere. They're at schools and hospitals, you name it. And so that is just Canada, and gender neutral language has permeated Canadian institutions to such an extent that it's there in our educational institutions, it's everywhere, that I don't think we should be surprised. I in fact completely expected the RCMP police officer to describe this individual as a gun person, and we knew immediately then at that point that this was probably a trans-identifying person who was responsible for this violence. But unfortunately, this is Canada.
Okay, got it. My guest here tonight, Niall Gardner, who used to be an aide to Margaret Thatcher, the former British Prime Minister, the first female British Prime Minister. What do you make of those comments from Rupert there? By the way, I don't want to distract or detract from the victims here, which we're going to hear a lot about when Mark Carney takes to the podium, but I think it's still a pertinent conversation, Niall, about the police chief taking more seemingly energy and concern about the pronouns of the gunman than at that point when he spoke to the victims.
Yeah, it's a real shame, I think, that we've seen sort of woke, far left-wing ideology take over in large parts of Canada.
But Rupert was saying that's just half the course now, not even a surprise to...
Yeah, it just seems to be accepted. But there are large numbers of Canadians, of course, who absolutely abhor this shift to the left and want to see Canada return to being a nation that really stands for traditional values, actually. And all of this progressive ideology, I think, is extremely destructive for Canada. And I think we're seeing Canadian decline as a result of it, actually. And there's also, it seems, a lot of self-loathing as well in Canada with regard to the ruling liberal elites and this huge culture of guilt and so on. And I think it's destructive, actually, for Canada, really. And I think we're witnessing in real time Canadian decline under Carney and his left-wing, far left-wing administration.
Rupert, is that right? Is Canada in decline?
I would push back on that point a little bit. Canada is in a state of flux right now. It depends what you're talking about. Are you talking about the economy? Are you talking about woke issues? I can tell you on woke issues, this government hasn't exactly doubled down on any of these initiatives. The last budget actually got rid of a lot of funding for woke initiatives. So that's a hopeful sign. But I do want to stress that as someone who writes quite a lot about woke culture in Canada and how depressing it is when you hear a land acknowledgement and the self-loathing, as Niall pointed out, it is extremely depressing. But I do want to stress the fact that Canada historically has been a very progressive country. The Conservative Party in Canada, the Conservative Party that is in power in Canada, in Ontario where I live, is called the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. It's got progressive in its in the party's name, and so that's just how. And even among conservatives, you'll have hardcore conservatives who oppose wokeism. They will oppose gender-affirming care and they're anti-abortion and so on. But there's also a sizable chunk of conservatives who are like, you know what, this is Canada. We have a let and live attitude towards these issues. As long as you're not interfering in my life, that's all I care about. So. My question really is, I wonder if this incident, this massacre, is going to result in some kind of a reckoning as far as gender-affirming care is concerned, because that's the key question. I do believe that Canada swung in the other direction, and it's time for the pendulum to swing back. I mean, we are socially transitioning young kids in schools without their parents' consent. I mean, that sort of thing has just gone out of control. And while gender-affirming care in terms of top and bottom surgeries, still require parental consent, and it's restricted to minors, mature minors, that's the word we use here. It's still the case that things have gotten out of control. Just like with all of these other things that I write about, like MAID. We should have a separate discussion about how MAID, it started off as something that you would only administer to a person who is really, really suffering and where their death was foreseeable. It's now being used for everybody. Yeah. I just wrote a piece about a 28-year-old young man from Toronto who was euthanized because he had type 1 diabetes and he was partially blind. This is where we are in Canada, and I wonder if this incident is going to result in some kind of a reckoning.
Interesting. Really interesting to hear your perception and your reporting from the ground in Canada. Let's just head back to Tumblr Ridge, where this press conference is still going on. If you've just tuned in, we're waiting for Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, former Governor of the Bank of England, of course, who will be giving a speech in just a second. Let's listen and see what's going on.
Thanks, Daryl. Thank you to everybody who's here. Thanks for coming and being here. So we definitely need to gather together to pray for sure. And I'm not going to say good evening. I'm just going to say evening. And I know it's there's a lot of people that have a lot of things they want to say, and it's not about hot button topics or posturing in any way. It's about our children. Amen. It's about our children. And you know, I'm referred to as preacher, and that's what I do, but I'm not going to do that right now. But you know, the church is always open up on the hill, and I just feel, I've been feeling it for a while, to light up that cross on the roof somehow. And so if you're here today and you have a really tall ladder, let me know. I'd like to do that for our children. And I want to pray. It was a difficult time. Everybody, all of us, received the active shooter notice on our telephones, and I wondered if that was real. And a couple minutes later, I was up at the church with my wife, and we heard the sirens, and I really didn't know what to expect. And when it was over, and we were able to go to the hockey arena and watch the families come into the arena, or the children and their parents, and they were reunited, and there were some very, very emotional moments, and then people were allowed to leave, and some families were left behind just waiting for their children that didn't show up. And that was a very difficult time to just hold hands and cry and pray. And it's a difficult time for all of us. And we'll get through it. We'll get through it together. But when I wrote that down, and I said to myself, well, our daughter has passed away, and it's been a year, and we're not through it. So we're not going to get through it. But it'll just be us having to live with the consequences. And you know, John 3:16 starts off by saying, for God so loved the world. And God loves all of us, everybody. And so I'm having a difficult time with sitting with parents and that have lost their children and just crying, and you know, for the rest of us to gather together and encourage one another. It's a very difficult time for a lot of people, and we've all lost friends, and children have lost brothers and sisters, and it's a difficult time for all of us. We've lost children from our church, and it's a difficult time. So let's pull together, and I just want to pray. Lord, we pray, God, that you would speak to our hearts and our minds, and that you would help us to have strength for the day. Help us to work together and to be together, and to love each other, and to spread the love to everyone. And just help us all, Lord God, to get through this difficult time by loving each other. And I just pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
It is now my honour to invite Her Excellency, the Governor-General of Canada, Mary Simon, to join us and share a few words.
OK, we'll come back to that press conference as soon as Mark Carney, the PM, takes to the podium. Rupert, for now, thank you very much for your contributions. Rupert Subramanya, Canadian journalist, and we'll bring you more from the Tumblr Ridge site when we get it. Stick with us on GB News. Big question, should immigration rules be relaxed for NHS workers? Because Shabana Mahmood's new plans suggest that 50,000 NHS workers will be at risk of basically getting deported from the health service. Would you back a special immigration process for NHS workers? Matthew Sadler and Kevin Foster are with us on that in just a tick. First of all, let's get a look at your weather. No breaks.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Happy Valentine's Day, dry and sunny for many of us, but the dry weather won't last all that long. The next batch of rain and hill snow is on the way overnight tonight. It is chilly out there, risk of ice first thing, as well as quite a widespread rural frost. That should melt away, though, by lunchtime to leave many of us with a fairly fine day, particularly across eastern areas. That's where the sunshine's going to be the longest lived. Further west, the sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on. That's ahead of this weather front. And highs of around 5 or 6 degrees for most of us. It's not going to feel too bad in the sunshine, though, particularly across more eastern areas. But the cloud will thicken as the night goes on, particularly across more western areas. Across the east, though, the far northeast of Scotland, an early frost under those clearer skies will develop. Further south across parts of northeastern England as well, it will be a chilly night. And across parts of Northern Ireland, that rain already falling as snow to higher levels through this evening. That rain will push into parts of Wales, southwestern England later on in the night. And for many of us, it will be a cloudy and relatively cold night. And as that rain continues its journey eastwards, falling into that colder air, it brings a risk of snow to low levels across northern areas, 1 to 3 centimetres accumulating, but the snow will turn to rain by the morning as milder air is moving in behind it. So although it is a cold start to the night, behind it we'll see temperatures rise above 0 by Sunday morning as clearer skies and some blustery showers spread in from the west, but still a risk of some snow, perhaps some travel disruption first thing on Sunday morning. But as I said, that risk is only very short-lived as it does turn somewhat milder, at least above 0 by Sunday lunchtime. And behind it, lots of showers moving in, some fairly unsettled weather. So a much wetter day to come on Sunday compared to Saturday. So do make the most of the sunshine today if you can. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
The scale and the speed of change, as well as the nature of it, has frayed trust and eroded public confidence. Between 2021 and 2024, we saw over 2.6 million more people enter this country than leave it. And this included widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here. Far too many have been able to enter this country and disappear into the black economy.
Well, that was Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood talking about the influx of migrants into Britain. It's quite ironic, actually. She was on the beaches of Lesbos in Greece some years ago, welcoming illegal migrants into Greece. And, of course, they start their journey there into Europe and eventually the UK. And also, I seem to remember some article of hers as well some years ago saying that the UK, Britain, should something like double the amount of asylum seekers we take. Anyway, she's now the Home Secretary, so she seems to have changed her tune because I think that's what she thinks people want to hear. She's announcing changes imminently to Britain's visa system. Nursing leaders are warning that up to 50,000 nurses could quit as a result of those visa changes if they go ahead, risking what they call the NHS's biggest ever workforce crisis. We're going to hold this. We're going to Canada. Mark Carney has just popped up. Let's go to Canada.
For letting me be here with you this evening. I know that nothing I can say will bring your children home. I know that no words from me or anyone can fill the silence in your homes tonight, and I won't pretend otherwise. But I, the leader of the opposition, the leader of all the federal parties, wanted you to hear, not from Ottawa, not through a screen, but standing here together in your home, we wanted you to hear the Canadians are with you, and we will always be with you. We wanted you to hear that whatever portion of your sadness that Canadians can bear to help to ease your heavy load, we will gladly do so. La population canadienne est avec vous. Nous serons toujours à vos côtés. I've spent the last few hours in Tumblr Ridge. With my colleagues, I've sat with families, first responders, friends, neighbors, who've had to live through something that no one should ever have to endure. And we've listened, and we felt what's always defined this community. People caring for each other. That is who you are. In tough economic times, you didn't leave. You stayed, and you helped your neighbors find work. You kept the lights on at the rink, and the doors open at the school. When the wildfires threatened, you checked in on the seniors down the block. You loaded trucks. You made sure that no one was left behind. And when the unimaginable happened on Tuesday, you were there again. First responders at the school in less than 2 minutes, teachers shielding their children. You held each other as you're holding each other right now. This is grace. It's what we do for each other. It's what we receive from each other. Open hearts when the world falls apart. Tumblr Ridge is full of grace this evening. Tumblr Ridge est plein de grâce ce soir. I want to speak for a moment about those we lost. Abdel Monza, a bright, shining, smiling, ambitious young man who loved school so much that he teared up when his father suggested homeschooling. Zoe Benoit, resilient, vibrant, caring, strong 12-year-old who loved art, singing, playing with her siblings. Tiki Lampert, Tiki Torch, a young woman powered by love and happiness who loved her siblings, painting, cooking, crafts, K-pop, demon hunters. Ezekiel Schofield, a hockey player who always had a smile on his face. Kylie Smith, beautiful, kind, innocent soul, an artist who dreamed of studying in Toronto one day. Shanda Avugana Durand, who on Tuesday went to Tumblr Ridge Secondary School so that students could learn, who stayed to protect. There's no greater act of love. Tonight, Maya and Paige are in BC Children's Hospital in Vancouver, and we're praying for them and the others who are wounded, just as we pray for Jennifer and Emmett, who were taken from their home, for they too deserve to be mourned. I'd like to share one other thing with you this evening. In 1989, a young woman was sitting in a classroom in Montreal when a gunman opened fire. She was shot 4 times. She survived. 14 others of her friends and classmates did not. And in the weeks that followed, still recovering from her wounds, she made a decision to go back and finish her degree. It wasn't easy. It took years. The pain didn't disappear. It never fully has. But she built a life. She became an engineer. She raised 4 children. And now she serves with my colleagues in the House of Commons. And this week she spoke through tears about your children. I share her story not because healing is simple. It's not. Not because there's a timeline for grief. There isn't. No one can tell you how to share your burden. But that woman, Natalie Provost, is proof, living, breathing proof, that it's possible to endure the unendurable, that the horror of what happened doesn't have to be the end of what's to come. Natalie Provost est la preuve vivante qu'il est possible de supporter l'insupportable. And that's true because we don't just give grace, we receive grace. Grace from Kylie, Ezekiel, Zoe, Tiki, Abel, Shonda. Grace that fills this community, this extended family, gathering in the cold and holding candles for all of your children. And the grace from across Canada. And when we leave here tonight, and some of you go back to quiet houses, some of you go back to empty rooms, please know that you're not alone. Vous n'êtes pas seul. When you wake up tomorrow and the world feels impossible, know that millions of Canadians are with you. When the cameras leave and the quiet sets in, know that we still will be here. And know that we shall need you too. Because Canada is a community that relies on each other's grace. And may that grace bless us all.
That was Mark Carney there, the Canadian Prime Minister, paying tribute to the victims of the mass school shooting in Tumblr Ridge, Canada. Paying tribute to the children, the poor young children who were murdered by the trans shooter. Matthew, I was talking a bit earlier about the sort of, well, to Rupert, the Canadian journalist, who was saying how, you know, Canada is now progressive, it's just ingrained in society. Does President Trump have any part to play in the fact that Carney was elected?
You know, I followed the election pretty closely. I had friends working in the Conservative Party in Canada for Pierre Poilievre on that race. And it is, you could make the argument that President Trump probably tipped the scales. But the one thing that I really picked up in this presentation, this memorial service, is the words of the pastor, of the preacher.
Yeah.
And I think of Psalm 139:14, where the individual says, David the psalmist says, I'm in awe of you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. We are all made in the image of a creator. That is my faith system, my belief system. And to go back to this question of a trans shooter, that is somebody who fundamentally believes they are in the wrong body. And it is a departure from our faith, it's a departure from our creation, and it lends itself to the mental illness that we see in this.
And arguably playing God as well. If you have the power to decide your own, you know, you're saying God was wrong, I was born in the wrong body, there was a mistake by the creator. Anyway, we could talk about it for hours. Well said, Matthew. Before the show ends, let's get stuck into this debate. Matthew Stadlen and Kevin Foster have been waiting patiently down the line. Hello, chaps. Good evening to you. It's about Shabana Mahmood, the NHS. Should we give special provisions to nurses, Mark Foster? Let's start with you. Sorry, Kevin Foster. About allowing them to stay, because Shabana Mahmood's new visa reforms, it's suggested by NHS groups that up to 50,000 workers would have to leave the health service. Kevin.
Well, it's worth digging into this number, which seems to be based on a survey that Royal College of Nursing did back in November, where they spoke to 5,000 those migrant workers who they said, some of them said they wouldn't have come, others that they'd be unsure. it's then extrapolated across the whole NHS workforce. It's worth noting there's already quite a number of special provisions for nurses and certain people working within the NHS, i.e. they don't pay the immigration health surcharge, which is £1,000 a year. And actually, if you look at the government's own proposals, they're talking about a discount of 5 years on settlement if you're in a specified public service or sort of occupation. It's hard to believe that nursing won't end up being one of those.
Kevin, just very quickly before I go to Matthew, you're a former immigration minister. Do you believe Shabana Mahmood? Do you think she's authentic? Because I mentioned a bit earlier how she was sat on the beaches of Lesbos welcoming in illegal migrants. She was calling for the UK to double, I think it was, as far as I remember, their asylum intake. Is she the real deal?
Well, it's certainly apt that we're talking about Syria when you see someone have a conversion that's, worthy of a trip to Damascus in terms of this issue. But I think what's probably really driving a lot of this, Ben, at the end of the day, is where Labour is in the opinion polls. Pretty much anyone looking at this knows that they can't afford to fight the next election on immigration. That means they've got to resolve some of these issues. And this is, we're talking about legal migration here. Of course, there's an even bigger challenge around illegal migration and the boats in the Channel.
All right, Matthew, thank you for waiting so long. Appreciate it. Why don't we just train British workers, say goodbye to these foreign workers, and then train up some Brits? That sounds like a good idea.
Just very briefly, I mean, I was watching that vigil with you guys in Canada, and my God, what those parents are going through in that community. And I was tearing up before Mark Carney spoke, but I thought he spoke wonderfully and really spoke for a nation there. So I just wanted to say that. And you're a parent as well, Ben, and I just don't think we can imagine what that grief is like.
I don't think I'd be around if that happened to my kids. I think, yeah, goes without saying. But yeah, thank you for that, Matthew.
So yeah, just moving on to this question. Look, I understand and appreciate that many millions of people in our country are concerned about the levels of immigration. And you heard Shabana Mahmood in that clip earlier talk about just how many people had come net to this country in the last few years. And it's a lot of people. It's nowhere near as many as Sir Jim Ratcliffe claimed the other day when he got his facts so hopelessly wrong and making those profoundly offensive comments. But there's no doubt that this government is determined to get a grip on it. We know that net migration, since Labour came into power, has come down massively. Now, that may be partly as a consequence of some of the dying policies of the last Conservative government. So this government definitely understands the feelings of many millions of people in this country. However, I would just urge a couple of notes of question. First of all, the Labour government is changing the rules. So Reform want to actually change the rules. So if you have indefinite leave to remain and you weren't here because of the EU, that you would then have that stripped away, as I understand it. And that to me is just a wicked policy. But this Labour government is also being pretty draconian in that it wants to double or perhaps triple in some cases the amount of time you have to wait for indefinite leave to remain. And that's if you're already potentially about to achieve that status. And you could say that's un-British because it's not playing by the rules. The further note of caution is that when my dad was dying of mesothelioma, which he got from asbestos, in his last 3 months, I helped care for him. And I was there five times a day, as most people would be if they were able to, for their dying dad. And he was also helped by dozens of carers from sponsored by the NHS. And one of those people was born in this country. One of those people. So I'd put a word of warning out there. I understand people feel strongly about immigration, but if we lose people, then our parents cannot die in dignity.
Okay. God bless to your father, by the way, Matthew. Kevin, before I let you go, just yes or no answer, please, because we're very pushed for time. Are Labour going harder on immigration than the Tories than when you were in government?
Well, they're certainly going harder now than perhaps we saw under Mr. Sunak until the changes near the very end of his government. But look, Ben, we all want to see this issue dealt with. They would certainly the sort of things we should hope the Conservative Party support if they need to face down a Labour rebellion.
Kevin, Matthew, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Matthew, as well. Thank you, Noel, and viewers at home. I will see you tomorrow night for midnight in the UK. Good night.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Happy Valentine's Day, dry and sunny for many of us, but the dry weather won't last all that long. The next batch of rain and hill snow is on the way overnight tonight. It is chilly out there, risk of ice first thing, as well as quite a widespread rural frost. That should melt away, though, by lunchtime to leave many of us with a fairly fine day, particularly across eastern areas. That's where the sunshine's going to be the longest lived. Further west, the sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on. That's ahead of this weather front. And highs of around 5 or 6 degrees for most of us. It's not going to feel too bad in the sunshine, though, particularly across more eastern areas. But the cloud will thicken as the night goes on, particularly across more western areas. Across the east, though, the far northeast of Scotland, an early frost under those clearer skies will develop. Further south across parts of northeastern England as well, it will be a chilly night. And across parts of Northern Ireland, that rain already falling as snow to higher levels through this evening. That rain will push into parts of Wales, southwestern England later on in the night. And for many of us, it will be a cloudy and relatively cold night. And as that rain continues its journey eastwards, falling into that colder air, it brings a risk of snow to low levels across northern areas, 1 to 3 centimetres accumulating, but the snow will turn to rain by the morning as milder air is moving in behind it. So although it is a cold start to the night, behind it we'll see temperatures rise above 0 by Sunday morning as clearer skies and some blustery showers spread in from the west, but still a risk of some snow, perhaps some travel disruption first thing on Sunday morning. But as I said, that risk is only very short-lived as it does turn somewhat milder, at least above 0 by Sunday lunchtime. And behind it, lots of showers moving in, some fairly unsettled weather. So a much wetter day to come on Sunday compared to Saturday. So do make the most of the sunshine today if you can. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World with me, Charlie Peters. On tonight's show, I'm joined by the broadcaster and journalist Emma Wolfe. Left in the corner is the political commentator Matthew Stadland. Real World, Real People tonight is with Tony Kunis. He's the CEO of Face INT. We're talking all things facial recognition with him. And for Last Orders behind this bar, I'll be joined by the legal pharmacist Thorin Govind. Loads coming up, but first, let's get to the news.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenzer with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Lord Mandelson has reportedly been summoned to appear before Congress to testify about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It's understood House Democrats sent a letter to the disgraced peer tonight calling on him to give evidence to the Oversight Committee as part of their investigation into the paedophile. The Prime Minister has called for the UK to work with Europe, saying there's no UK security without European security. There's no European security without UK security. Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that the world order as we know it no longer exists. 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Waleed Sadawi and Ammar Hussein were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Police have shot a man near the Arc de Triomphe who tried to attack officers with a knife today. That's according to the Paris mayor. The French anti-terrorist department added it was aware of the situation and had opened an inquiry into the incident. Those are your latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World with me, Charlie Peters. Tonight, delighted to be joined by the broadcaster and journalist Emma Wolfe and the political commentator Matthew Stadland. We're starting the programme this evening with a very important topic on justice, because the Justice Secretary David Lammy is facing calls to block the early release of a prisoner called Zahid Iqbal, an Islamist who was jailed after he conspired to carry out a terrorist attack at an Army Reserve centre in Luton. He is being released despite his prison offender manager saying that should not happen. We'll start with you, Emma. What is your view on this decision? Do you think that the Justice Secretary should be using his powers to block these sorts of decisions?
Absolutely not. I take a really simple view about incarceration and early release. If you have been sentenced to be behind bars, you know, the justice system has decided that you should be behind bars. There is a reason why people are so worried about this early release. We have seen thousands and thousands of men, it is men, being released onto our streets early. There is a reason why people are worried about that, because it's not safe. If, on the other hand, the probation service are fit for purpose, they are not at the moment. If they are fit for purpose, if they deem someone is safe, someone is rehabilitated, someone should be back in our society and should be contributing and should be out on the streets, fine. But the probation service is in absolute crisis. So what on earth are we doing releasing dangerous offenders onto our streets? In December and in the past few months, we saw record high numbers of recalls to prison. So absolutely no to early release and absolutely no to Iqbal.
But Emma, looking at the situation that the government are in, they'll definitely say, look, we've inherited a broken system. You've said it yourself, that probation is in disarray. It's not just probation, of course. The full spectrum of the justice system is on its knees.
Exactly.
The courts don't work. The prisons are overflowing. You've got Victorian prisons with cells designed for one person with two in them. That's happening across the country. So what sort of position is David Lammy in even to deal with this problem?
You've also got prison guards sleeping with prisoners. You've also got drug dealing and mobile phones, insane levels. There's one reason prisoners are being released early. That's not because they're safe. It's because, as you say, the court system and the judicial system and the prison system are on their knees. And Labour have promised reform. Shabana Mahmood has promised reform. David Lammy has promised reform. And guess what? They've failed.
Matthew, what can Labour do to turn around this situation? I know there's that criticism that the Conservatives left this system in a totally broken state, but we're nearly 2 years in now since the Labour government came into power. When can they start to turn it around? And until they do that, these sorts of decisions, they are unacceptable, aren't they?
So it's difficult for me to double guess the parole board, and the parole board will take in all sorts of evidence in their decision making. What I would say is, as I understand it, the Justice Secretary has limited powers when it comes to overturning decisions of the parole board. So I think they can appeal decisions effectively. There could be a process of reconsideration, but I don't think David Lammy can simply say, you've got it wrong, send this bloke back to prison. Is there an Islamist threat in our country? Of course there is, and our security services are working, I've no doubt, round the clock to handle that. On the issue, the wider issues of the justice system and the crisis it's facing, I echo much of what you've said, Charlie, and it's really important that that is gripped. However, I can't see how it's going to be gripped unless significant amounts of money are put into it, because with a Victorian system that you describe, we don't want to have cells designed for one person where two people are living in them, because that's not just bad for the individuals who are still human beings, but also presumably
bad for rehabilitation. And
exactly, has consequences further down the line, which are therefore bad for all of us.
But Matthew, you're saying that there is a lack of power afforded to the Justice Secretary. Well, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has said that using the Victims and Prisoners Act of 2024, it's Conservative legislation, that David Lammy could actually block this decision. So that's being disputed. And on to the wider point, though, about to what extent this system can be fixed. Is it in Labour's remit to get it done quickly enough? What do you make of Matthew's points there?
It's their job to get it done. And if there is a scintilla of doubt about someone possibly reoffending, whether that's an Islamic terrorist or whether it's a domestic abuser who might be then out on the streets again, if there is a shred of doubt on that, people should not be released. Prisoners, convicts should not be released. They should be behind bars. And I don't care, actually, about the conditions that they are kept in as much as I care about the public and the safety of the public. And that has to be the most important thing. And yes, they haven't dealt with this situation. Yes, overcrowding. Yes, terrible, terrible conditions. But I've always said about prisons, you need to rehabilitate people. You don't just lock them up and then release them after 5 years or 10 years and expect them to be model citizens. How's that going to work? They need to be rehabilitated.
It's much more difficult, as I think Charlie and I agree, to rehabilitate people when they are living in inhumane conditions. Just on the Chris Philp point, I don't know whether he's right or wrong, but what I would say is we've got to be very careful, I think, as a society, not to put justice in the hands of politicians, because that can then lead to...
Parliament sets the sentencing guidelines. That comes from politics. That comes from Parliament.
Sure, but what I'm saying is I don't think we want politicians to give themselves too much power when it comes to imprisonment, because we don't want politicians, for their own political ends, to be determining how long people stay in prison.
But that's exactly what happens already. I mean, that is how it works in Britain. There isn't this sort of separation of the state.
It's not.
That people imagine happens.
People, Charlie, no, politicians do not sentence people.
I know, but they set the sentences. Parliament chooses how long people go to prison for.
They do, but what we don't want is, once someone is sentenced, for politicians to be able to come along and say, actually, I think they should still be in prison for 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
As in they should overrule the parole board, for example. You don't think that should happen?
Well, as I've said, I think they already have the powers to institute a process of reconsideration. What I'm saying is if there is political pressure on the Justice Secretary to keep someone in prison, And he then were able to overrule the decision of the parole board for political reasons that might be useful to him or her as the Justice Secretary or indeed to the government. That is problematic because we don't want to have political prisoners in our country.
Or I don't think that this Islamist who's facing early release could ever be considered a political prisoner if pressure is done to keep him behind bars. But Emma, talking more generally about this, we do already have political efforts to check again when judges make decisions on lenient sentences, for example. There was a man last year who was found guilty, finally, and imprisoned, having forced a teenage girl in Bradford to be married to him while he was part of a grooming gang. His sentence was deemed too lenient. Pressure was put on. He was put behind bars for a much longer time. That sort of thing should take place when the political pressure is there.
Of course the politicians are in charge of all this. They set the budgets, they run the Home Office, or they try to run the Home Office, they run the judicial system, of course they do. And, we've had endless discussions about, about whether people should be allowed back into our country, about the whole court system and about the whole issue of early release. So I think, this is absolutely an area where politicians need to take a lead.
And do you think it's an example, Emma, of the country more generally not taking the Islamist threat more seriously? We have a terrorist here being released from prison before his sentence is up. This is a man who was plotting to kill soldiers at an Army Reserve centre. We're seeing many other Islamists being inspired by similar attacks on soldiers in Britain outside Woolwich Barracks, the murder of Lee Rigby, for example, well over 10 years now. These sorts of appalling acts of violence, they do inspire others. And when someone is caught plotting in that way, how can they be let out early?
How can they be let out early? But also, why are they not being deported? That would be my question. Why are they not being deported? And we hear about the overcrowded prisons and the creaking justice system and the blocked up courts. And then we have, people being imprisoned for things like Facebook posts. So, there is a real crisis in this country about where the priorities should be and what we take seriously.
Matthew,
how many more threats do we need?
You can't be deported if you're British, right? So let's just be completely clear.
Well, there have been many cases we have removed the British citizenship of offenders, for example, grooming gang perpetrators in Rochdale. So you can be deported if you're British, if you're a dual national.
It's incredibly difficult to, and rightly so, to remove someone's British citizenship. Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish, a presenter on GB News, does not believe, and nor do I, in two-tier British citizenship, just to put that out there. On the issue of early release, let's be again clear about this. This was part of the original sentence. So it's not as though someone's saying, let's let this person out earlier than the judge intended.
Right.
It's part of the sentence.
And Matthew, we know what the system is, but the problem is, I think people are waking up to how bad it is. They know that there is early release as part of the original sentence. But I think a lot of people in Britain are now seeing this sort of sentencing, seeing people being released from prison, maybe halfway through or 3/4 of the way through what they were said to be getting, and that causes frustration.
Sometimes after a third of their term, they're being released. And look at the evidence from the probation service. They are not equipped, they're not experienced enough to deal with this. They are not able to deal with the workloads that they have. They are not able to do that proper assessment where it goes through the parole board and they assess the risk. And if there's any risk, of course this man should not be out on our streets.
More money is needed to fix the justice system.
I don't think it's just about more money. It's reorganisation and proper leadership.
But all of that requires cash too. What would you cut to fund more injustice?
Foreign aid.
Yourself, Matthew?
I'd have to think very deeply about it because these questions come up again and again and again. We recognise that almost across the board, there needs to be more money injected into our public services, including the justice system. Where you find cuts or whether you decide to raise taxation, those are key political questions. If we give up entirely on foreign aid, and that's already been slashed,
there's always money to send abroad.
Let me just make the point. We are then giving up on our soft power and our influence around the world, which is incredibly important.
Matthew, if you live in Luton, where this man was plotting a terrorist attack, soft power in Pakistan and India and other countries around the world possibly matters less to you than preventing.
That's not how we run our taxation system.
Clearly not, and that's part of the crisis.
I'm saying we rightly look at things in the round, and part of our soft power is trying to make the world a better place.
Soft power. We have zero soft power.
You two have to leave it there. Coming up after the break on Real World, Real People, I'll be speaking to the CEO of Face INT, Tony Kunis, to discuss facial recognition technology.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our